what makes you happy?
I think my friends make me happy just because I'm a social guy. Like, my battery fills up from talking to people, from being with people.
Having friendships that are almost as old as I am, I guess. I've got some girlfriends that I've been friends with since kindergarten and I'm still super close with. So that makes me really happy.
I mean, what makes me happy is my family. That's not, I know it seems like a candid answer, but like, I got a 15-year-old daughter and, you know, the other night she wanted to sit down and talk to me about things and tell me what was going on in her life.
I think when you're with the kind of people that you don't have to say what's really going on and they just like get it and they pick up on it and they're like with you in those moments. They can like laugh when you laugh, they can like sit with you when you're anxious and you don't even have to say anything and they get that.
All right, there we are. My first question was going to be originally, still then, who doesn't want to be happier? Is there anybody in here that doesn't want to be at least a little happier? Now, happiness is defined as a feeling of pleasure or contentment or satisfaction with life. It can be momentary, it can be fleeting, it can be a little longer term. Maybe it happens in a happy place, maybe you're with your happy person. What I think is that no matter what, each of us we'd take a little bit more of it, right, if we could. It's the state of being that we want to be in for as long as we possibly can. And there are entire fields of study, scientists and researchers that are dedicated to finding out what truly makes us happy. Just 3 that are continuing to go on that are currently active. One is the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It started in 1938. Where Harvard researchers and scientists got together and invited 100 men to participate in the study over their lifetime. Apparently in the 1930s, we weren't concerned with women's happiness, but that's fine, no big deal. We're happy now. And they studied them throughout their whole lifetime, and then their families after that, making this the longest study on happiness in history. And they asked them, like, hey, what makes you happy with your career? What builds a happy life relationally? Where are you living? What are you doing? How is your life unfolded in a way that actually leads to a happy and full life? And then there's the whole Blue Zones project. Now, Blue Zones are actually concentrated pockets around the globe where people, like more people live well into their hundreds than other places in the world. This is led by National Geographic. They got together with some medical researchers and some longevity experts and said, what makes these people live longer? What habits do they have? What are their relationships like? To what do they attribute their happiness? And then there's the World Happiness Survey, which is actually conducted globally every year starting in 2012. The United Nations developed this survey to ask people to share their perception of happiness within their country, right? And they use 6 key factors to determine if someone was happy in those countries: income, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom to make their life choices, generosity, and perception of corruption in their community. Just so you know, in case anybody was looking to move, according to 2025's World Happiness Survey, Finland is the happiest country in the world. It has been number 1 for the last 8 years. Is anybody in here from Finland? Yeah, not in the first service either. It's odd, because they're happy there, so they're staying there, and we should go with them. In addition to all the research and all the scientific things that go into what making us happy and trying to figure out, I mean, they've discovered things like, hey, it's generosity, it's deep meaning and purpose, it's relationships, it's healthy community, it's all these things contribute to make us happiness. There's also just an entire industry built around your happiness. Products, experiences, services that are guaranteed to make you happier. Things that people sell, things that you buy, things that you sign up for, trends that you subscribe to, things that you believe will make you happier. And I'm in for all of it. I will do all of it. I am literally a sucker for every gimmick, every ad, anything that someone comes up to me, like literally, and people did this after first service. So if you come up to me and you tell me, I've tried this thing and it really works, I will do it, okay? If I think it will help me sleep better, If I think it will help like make me look younger or like tighten my skin, especially like the neck skin now in this phase of life, like if I think it will help me have a better relationship with my kids or with my husband, I'm in for all of it. In fact, I just wrote down a few of the things that I've been trying. I've done snail mucin. Yeah, if you haven't tried that, you should totally try it. I've done the cold plunging thing. I had like a turmeric tea phase. It will stain your clothes. I've had a Juice Plus subscription. I've tried the peptides and the beets. I've used Norwex products. We have a squatty potty. We actually have 3. Don't even get me started on bidets. We've done the 3-13-30 treadmill thing because that's supposed to make you happier. I've woken up at dawn so that I can catch the most natural blue light because apparently it's supposed to do something to like a bubble in the back of your eyeball. I don't know if any of this is real. And I will drink any magnesium cocktail you give me before bed just so I can sleep a little better. And then a few weeks ago, started to read a book called How to Be Well, basically debunking everything I've ever tried. It actually, this author is setting out to kind of have us consider, she debunks the way our culture sells happiness. The wellness industry, which are services, products, experiences that are aimed at increasing your well-being, your holistic health, and your happiness, brought in $6.6 trillion last year. And it's projected to bring in $7.2 trillion this year. And my husband has asked me how much I've contributed to that amount, which is fair. I think there's something in us, and I know there's something in me that wants to find the thing that might make us just a little happier. Last week, Jordan kicked us off with our series, just reminding us that you don't find happiness, you form it. And you took us through these teachings of Jesus that are kind of like flipping the script, kind of flipping things upside down from the way we think we will get our happiness or where we will find our peace, challenging us to consider that maybe it's not where we're looking. Maybe it's not how we actually think it's found. And we're going to spend the rest of our series just exploring different things that might increase our happiness. We couldn't cover them all in this series, but this morning I picked the one that I liked the least. We're going to talk about surrender this morning. And the reason that I like that one the very least is because I really prefer its opposite, control. I like to control things. I like to control lots of things, possibly some people. I like maybe to control a few of you. I'm not going to look directly at you. I'm just saying. Because I think that if you let me control you, your life would be so much happier. And so would mine. That's really what I'm getting at. But time and time again, Jesus does this thing. He has these sayings, and he has these things where his audience would have listened to him and said, that makes no sense. You're asking me to give up control. And for them at that time, control was also attached to survival, which I think we sometimes feel the same way even now today. But he keeps saying these things where his audience would have been confused, and I think it even confuses us, where he's like, no, you have a couple of choices. You can control things or try, or you can surrender, and you can place them in my hands. But I totally know that that's scary. And I totally know why. I mean, I think that most of my desire to control things genuinely comes from a good place. Because especially for the people I love, I want the best in life for them. And I like people okay too. And so for most people, I want okay things for them as well. And we can just want to have a conversation with just the online audience, because I think that there's some of them that totally, I think you guys get me, right? Let's just you and me, we won't tell anybody in here. We have to control things. We have to control things because there's no way in the world anybody in here is going to get it. There's no way they can get their stuff together. You've got to control it. At least I think that's how we often feel. But what I've been challenged with recently is how that is so contradictory to what Jesus teaches us. That is so different than how he challenges us to live our life. So we're just going to spend some time in some of the biggest teachings of Jesus that talk about control, because as I get older, I am recognizing there are fewer and fewer things I can control. I can't control the people at Costco, can't control my IRA, cannot control my neighbor's lawn and how it's now spilling over into my lawn. And then I'm realizing more and more now in the season of life, there are literal things I can't physically control, right? I can't jump anymore. That's not happening. Ladies, the reason the ladies laughed is because they understand. If I sneeze, who knows? Who knows? And guys, I'm just going to let you know, I can't control my eyesight. This is like 500 font, and I'm still struggling. But let's jump in. Starting in Matthew. Whoever wants to become great among you, which I think most of us are taught and kind of do want to become great among everybody, must be your servant. This idea that true significance comes from humility and service instead of status. Can you imagine how crazy that would have felt to the audience of Jesus' day when status was kind of like where they were like locked in, and it was a thing that actually held them back? And so Jesus is not just saying like, hey, don't work to elevate it. Actually be okay with the fact that you may be elevating someone else's status. That's hard to hear. Continuing in Matthew. Many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. So again, I surrender to this idea that I should stop striving and chasing to be number one. I should stop trying to climb the ladder at anybody's expense. I should stop, at least can I try and be number 2 or number 3? But you're telling me to put myself last? But I'm confused because the great theologian Ricky Bobby says if you're not first, you're last. I feel like that's right. And another teaching from Jesus. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Jesus is actually speaking to his impending death, but he's also talking to his followers about a larger, broader purpose. That if you want to find your life, you may actually have to lose it. And we get this with nature. We totally understand that in nature, if a seed falls to the ground and cracks open and sacrifices itself, a fruit or a flower is produced, right? And we're like, yes, flowers are beautiful. We like to eat fruit. I just don't personally want to do any of that. I don't want to have to go through that. We want the benefit of surrender without what it takes. We want the benefit, we know to lay down our lives that we will produce something greater, but man, the process is scary. Let's keep reading what Jesus tells us. Here's another one. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Side note, worst marketing strategy ever. What he's essentially saying is if you want to be a part of what I've got going on here, you are going to have to figuratively pick up your Roman death instrument and torture device every day. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. In this moment, Jesus is responding to Peter's recognition of Jesus as the Messiah. But Jesus is reminding them, like, hey, this is going to be great, but don't celebrate so quickly, because if you actually want to do this with me, it's going to be harder than you think. You're going to have to surrender. You're going to have to lay down your life. You're going to have to trust me in a way that means you aren't always going to be sure what's next. That if you want to find the life you're actually looking for, you're going to have to let the one that you have go. If you want to find what you're chasing, if you want to find what you're striving, you actually have to stop chasing and striving. And you have to release your life. You have to pick up your cross, look to be last, and seek to serve. Jesus is always challenging his audiences to think through things. Like instead of saying, how do I get more? He's like, no, I want you to surrender and ask, what's mine to give? What's mine to lay down? What's mine to give up? Instead of saying, how can I get them to see me? How can I get that attention? How can I get my boss to see me? How can I get that person to see me? What if our focus became, how can I see others? Instead of asking ourselves, why can't they get it together? Why can't they figure it out? Why can't they just do the right thing? Jesus is saying, what if you started asking yourself, how can I love them well, even if they can't, and maybe even if they never get it together? Because Jesus understood that happiness isn't actually found by holding on, by gripping and controlling, but it's found by releasing. It's found by letting go and surrendering. It's funny, we get this in our mind, but I just think we forget it. Like most of us would acknowledge that if we were to step into a relationship with someone, we would want it to be a chosen relationship, meaning that we would want that person to choose to spend time with us, not be forced to spend time with us. If someone's going to sign up to do life with us the rest of our life, we want that to be because it's what they've chosen, not because they're desperate or they're settled or they're manipulated or they're forced, because we know that chosen relationships have real power and efficacy. It's the same thing also with our kids, right? Like we want them to grow up, move out, so many ways, and we want them to become adults, but we want them to choose to be with us. We want them to want to come home and visit. I found myself last night, my son and I, we played cards. Now he's at home because he's home from school for the summer, but I was just like, I texted him later, I was like, thank you for playing cards with me, because I want them to choose to spend time with us rather than being forced or maybe guilt-tripped, which I still think that's just okay sometimes. I still think it's fun. We know that surrender and chosen relationships, releasing our ability to make other choices and choosing to be with someone else has power. We also know how to surrender because our reality will force that on us. That unexpected job loss, that disaster that hit, that moment you looked at your bank account and it just was not what it needed to be. Our reality will force us to surrender. We know that when life will throw certain things at us, we don't have a choice but to stop pretending that we have control, that we cannot do it all, that some things just don't even belong to us to do in the beginning. When our controlled and measured plans for our children do not work out, we are reminded that we have to surrender. But I wonder if maybe the reason Jesus teaches us to start practicing surrender is so that we can get used to it for when it does become a reality in our life. What if it wasn't just unforeseen circumstances or forced surrender, but we started practicing how to surrender every day now? And what if that's kind of what we see in Jesus? We see an example and a model of someone willingly choose surrender every day. Not just even ultimately with his life, but even in the words that he chose, in the people that he chose to be around, in the way that he spent his time. He laid it down every day to see what God had in store, rather than controlling, manipulating, forcing, taking over. But I get it. I know for some of you you're thinking like, no, actually, Jen, I hear what you're saying, that the opposite of control is surrender, but honestly, the opposite of surrender to me is chaos. If I don't control it, if I don't manage it, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be anarchy. But I find it interesting that that may be exactly what God was open to. That he understood that when he gave us the choice to trust him or to control our own way from the very beginning, that he was realizing the fact that we could bring chaos and anarchy into our own life or into our world. I know that surrender can feel like, hey, Jen, I think you're asking me to just give up. I mean, I can surrender, yes, when something's forced or unexpected, and I have to surrender. But if you're asking me to not say that thing to that person, to not make that comment over and over and over and over again, or to not send them that reminder over and over and over again, to not try and manipulate that relationship, to not try and maneuver my thing in that work dynamic, that sounds like giving up. I know that surrender can feel like resignation sometimes. But that's not what I'm talking about this morning. I'm not talking about that kind of surrender. That resignation comes from a place of despair, of giving up. Surrender comes from a place of hope, of trusting that the things that are not in my control, I am going to literally place them in God's hands. There's this thing, I know that surrender can seem like this nebulous concept. Yes, just surrender. We sing the song, I Surrender All. We talk about surrendering. I'm not talking about just tossing things out to the void. I'm talking about taking that thing that is aching in you right now, that you know you cannot control, and placing it in God's hands with hope. It's the difference between giving up and letting go or releasing. It's the difference in whatever and whatever you have, God. And I know that can be scary. And I know it can feel like, no, but I've got to figure it out and I've got to control it. But guys, I'll be honest, I sit across from people often, and so many of the things that we are desperately trying to manipulate and maneuver are actually 100% out of our control. Last month, or June, I had the opportunity to go to boot camp with Camp 75. Anybody go to boot camp here, right? Okay. Right, I was a part of the care team at boot camp. And side note, if you've never participated in Camp 75, it's literally one of the best things that we do. I mean, like when you see 400 to 500 middle school and high school students leading each other, singing, teaching each other, it's kind of surreal. It does something to you. But I was there a while ago, and I was there, and my son, Kyle, has been an intern for Camp 75 for the last 3 years. And this year at boot camp, he gave a message in front of those 400-something students. And he was nervous. Now, Kyle's taught before, but this time he was a little more nervous than usual. And he was like, hey, Mom, will you come in and listen to me practice? Side note also, we all practice way more than you think, a ton, and we'll still forget things. But Kyle was up there, and he was doing his thing, and I was so proud. It was like a proud mom moment. And, you know, it's funny because, like, I a couple of years ago, I don't remember timeline-wise, but, like, there were a couple of years in my life with Kyle that I was not sure we would have a relationship. It was that hard. Isn't that just that really hard parenting season? And I wasn't sure we would even be talking. Like, I knew when he's an adult, I don't know what kind of relationship. You know, it's funny, I told him I was going to share this morning, and I asked him, I said, you know, how long do you think our relationship was terrible? Because it was 2 years for me. He said, at least 5 or 6 years. That's cool. Didn't know it was that bad. But, and so he's up there. So it was like a moment that he even invited me into that space to watch us. He's so nervous. And so I'm sitting in the auditorium, and he's practicing. And I felt like this nudge from God. And God was like, you begged me to make sure that he knew me. And now look, he's up there talking about me and telling people that I love them. And I'm like, yes, that was you. Thank you so much, God. And then the Lord, because he loves me so much, nudged me again. Oh, but it's still not enough for you, is it? You want to complain about that you can't see his eyes because his hair's too long, and you want to complain about his sleep habits, or you want to complain about his room. When will you trust me with him? I so get it. I know that when we get up here and we say, hey, I think God's telling us to surrender. Hey, I think God's reminding us that he's in control, not us. I think God is telling us we can take it and put it in his hands, that it is so much easier said than done. But I think Jesus reminds us, guys, that the more you cling to your life, the more it slips away. But the more that you surrender, the more you actually find. And I would add a layer to that the more you cling to someone else's life, the more that relationship actually slips away. But the more that you surrender, the more that you place them in God's hands, the more I think you actually find. Now, we're going to talk about so many things in this series, and just so you know, like if we talk about any of these concepts and you go home and you try them and you don't like them, there is, at North Point, we always offer a 100% old life back guarantee. You can have your old life back whenever you want. So you can start, if you try these things we're about to talk about and you go home and they don't work, you can just go right back to chasing happiness the same way you were before. We want to give you a couple of things. I want to give you two things. One is a question and one is a tool that I think might help you look at surrender a little differently. So one is actually just a few months ago, I was having my own time with God in the morning, just sitting in my chair, drinking my coffee. And I was looking at that passage we looked at in Matthew, but this time it was in Luke. And I want to look at that. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross, there's that marketing, daily, and follow me. And for some reason that morning, with that verse, which I've read I feel like a million times, the word daily just kind of landed for me. And it just was it just stood out all day. And I think what I sat with is, I think what Jesus is saying is that I'm going to have to choose to die to something every day. And I felt like the question, what can I die to today, would be an interesting one to sit with for just, at least, my goal was to make it through the day with that mindset, maybe even venture into the week. But as soon as I started, it was really, really tough already, right out of the gate. I feel like if Jesus is asking me to die every day, as soon as I put my feet out of the bed, I'm going to have some struggles, right? And I think part of it actually is, it's funny, we don't really emphasize this part of Jesus' teaching, I don't think, because the church historically has done a great job of emphasizing life after death, which I think is beautiful and real and should be a conversation we have. But in this moment, Jesus is actually saying, I'm going to need you to die before you die. So I started asking myself, what can I die to today? Woke up, what can I die to today? Well, immediately, toxic thoughts about myself came up. I could die to those. And then Sal, as faithful as he is, got on my nerves, and I immediately was irritated with him, and I knew what he was saying was kind of right, but we're not ever going to admit that. So I decided to be offended and decided to throw something back, like be snarky back and send like some jabs his way, because that's healthy. But I felt like God was like, you could die to that. And then I came to work. So many things to die to at work. So many things to lay down. I can't control how so-and-so feels. I can't control how such and such conducts their work. I can't control any of that. I could let that go instead of try to say that thing or make that passive-aggressive comment or manipulate the situation. I could die to that. What in your world right now feels like it would be impossible to surrender? Feels like it would be really tough to just let it go, to bite your tongue, to not try and argue, to not try and prove your point again and again and again, to not send that reminder again and again and again, just to let it go. What does that look like? What could you die to today? When that thing jumps up tomorrow in you and it just grabs your attention and it irritates you, how could you pick up your cross in a real and tangible way? How could you start practicing surrender in the small daily things? What could you die to today? That's the question. Now the tool. Now this is a tool I have used for a long time, and I know it's a popular tool within counseling, and I just think it's just the best tool. I've even shared about it from stage. So I couldn't have a conversation about happiness without sharing about the one tool that I think will literally help you identify where your happiness is located. You can use this tool at any point. You just need a piece of paper, napkin, something to write on, and need a pen. You get out your paper and your pen when you're frustrated and you're dealing with a situation, and you put it in front of you, and you draw a circle. Anything that is irritating you, that is in your control, goes inside the circle. Anything that is not in your control goes outside the circle. Just a little hint. There's probably not going to be as much as you think inside the circle. Now, if I were just like to play out what this might look in my life, like I can't control a customer service experience. I cannot control that my package is late from Amazon, even though I ordered it in Prime, and I thought that's what Prime meant, but apparently that's not what Prime means anymore, and I'm frustrated, and I can't control it. I cannot control what you guys think right now, or the reality that this guy's been asleep the entire time I've been talking. I'm kidding. Alex has not been asleep. I'm kidding. I go to work, and I can get my stuff done, but I cannot control what anyone else does. I can see that so-and-so and such are hanging out, and it makes me feel left out. I can't control that. But I can control the invitations that I send. I can't control the economy. I can't control global politics. I can't control how you vote. I can't control the choices that my adult parents make. But I can control what kind of daughter I am. I cannot control what kind of men my sons become. But I can control the kind of mother that I try to be. And as much as I have tried, almost 25 years of trying, I cannot control my husband. But I am actually responsible for the kind of wife that I am. There's actually, guys, this is where God has said, hey, these are things that we can work with. These are things that we can manage. These are things we can do things about. Everything else outside the circle, it doesn't belong to you. It's not yours. I know that you feel like it is, or maybe you at least know that it should be. And you might actually be right. You might actually control that better than that other person. But it's not yours. Why do you keep picking it up and putting it inside your circle? Surrender it. Don't just toss it out your circle. You're putting it in God's hand. Again, not resignation, not despair, not giving up, but letting go, trusting, hope, and release. I've said a lot about being anti-control, but I do actually think God gives you control in a couple of areas in your life. I would actually argue probably only these two. I think God only gives you control over your attitude and your actions. Everything else is outside your circle. You know, I can't even really necessarily control my emotions, because when something jumps up and grabs me, it irritates me, it frustrates me, it offends me. I can't necessarily control how that flies across my mind, but I can control if I stop and think before I react. Of course it's going to bother me when people I love make choices that I think don't get them the best out of life. But I can choose whether I send that snarky text or not. I can choose if I try to be manipulative or not. And when they, I was about to say when they come home, but that's like a telltale sign who I'm talking about. But anyway, I get to choose the kind of attitude that my husband comes home to. Even if it means I have to take a second and gather my own thoughts from my day, I get to choose the kind of attitude I bring into my workspace. Even if I'm justified, and I can explain to you all the ways that this isn't right, or that's not fair, or this doesn't make any sense, I still get to choose the attitude I bring into the space. God gives me the ability to manage my attitude and my actions, but that's basically about it. There's not much else in my circle. That's why it would be so much better if I just woke up every morning and started practicing surrender. Instead of waiting for life to demand it of me, I might want to start practicing now. I think that's what Jesus was saying over and over and over again. If you want to find your life, you need to lose it for me. Give it to me. Put it in my hands. God gave us the beginning from the choice. Try things your way or trust me. That's the option we have with surrender. What do I get to die to today? How can I seek to serve? How can I put myself last? And those were hard things for the audience of Jesus to hear, and they're still hard things for us today. Because the world tries to sell us control, tries to give us the things that will make us happier. If you do this, you'll look younger. If you do this, you'll have a better relationship. If you do this, you do that. You're not going to find happiness. It's something you shape. It's something you build. It's something that you form over time with practice. And what if practicing surrendering, practicing taking the things that are not in your control and don't belong to you and putting them in the hands of Jesus shapes your happiness? Maybe if you're trying so hard to manage all the things that are outside your circle, that's why happiness feels so distant and elusive. And Jesus says, surrender. Lay it down. Bite your tongue. Trust me. Release. Let go. And see how your happiness takes shape. I'm going to pray for us. Father, we confess to you that there are about 1,000,001 things we'd like to control. God, for so many of us, control equals safety and security, or it equals progress or power. It is the thing that's going to make everything else okay. But we know that when we think about our relationships and the reality of life, how it demands of us surrender at times. What if there's something in there that we could start practicing now? That we could pick up our cross daily? That we could take the things that we're trying to shove into our circle and we could put it in your hands every day? I wonder if we practice that over and over and over in all the little ways and big ways. I wonder how that would shape our happiness. I wonder how that would shape our relationships. Show us the things that don't belong in our circles. Show us all the ways that we can die daily and come alongside you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys. Part 3 next week.